"They stole my clothes, Cowboy. Save me," cried the Apache woman at the lake. The morning sun rose slowly over the desert hills, spreading golden light across the wide, empty land. The lake lay calm and still, its surface reflecting the soft colors of the sky. Tiny waves lapped gently against the shore, and the scent of fresh water mixed with the dry, warm smell of the earth. Birds called to each other from the distant trees, and a soft wind rustled through the bushes. It was a peaceful morning, the kind that made the world seem quiet and safe. Near the edge of the lake, an Apache woman knelt on the soft sand. Her dark hair was tied back with a simple strip of cloth, and her eyes shone with focus and care. She dipped a worn basket into the cool water, lifting it full of sparkling lake water, and gently pouring it over the clothes she had laid on a flat stone. Each piece was carefully scrubbed, pressed against the rough surface, cleaned with patience. To her, this was not just washing clothes, it was a small ritual of care, a way to honor her home and her family. The lake was a place of comfort for her. She had grown up near this water, and it had always been a source of life and calm. As she worked, she watched the sunlight dance across the ripples. Tiny fish darted beneath the surface, their scales catching the light. The woman smiled softly, remembering the days when her children had splashed at the edge of the lake, laughing and shouting, their small voices carrying over the water. Those days felt close yet far, and she felt a quiet happiness mixed with longing. A few steps away, the cowboy appeared on the dusty path that led to the lake. He was a tall man, with a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face from the rising sun. His boots crunched on the dry earth as he walked slowly, aware of the soft beauty around him. He had been traveling from one ranch to another, moving cattle and checking fences. The land stretched endlessly, but he found moments like this quiet, untouched by the rush of the world, special and grounding. He noticed the woman by the lake. At first, he simply observed, keeping his distance. There was something striking in the way she moved, graceful yet strong, patient yet purposeful. The cowboy tipped his hat slightly, though she did not see him. There was a respect in his gaze, an understanding that this was her space, her morning, and he was merely a visitor in this wide, open land. The woman hummed a soft tune as she worked, a song her grandmother had taught her. The sound floated across the water, light and soothing. It mixed with the gentle lapping of the lake and the rustling wind, creating a moment of perfect peace. She did not notice the cowboy yet, nor did she notice a small cloud of dust rising in the distance. It was faint at first, almost like a trick of the eye, but it grew slowly as time passed. The cowboy's instincts told him something might be approaching. He squinted into the distance, seeing a few figures moving along the edge of the hills. They were far away and their purpose was unclear. He hesitated for a moment, thinking it could simply be travelers or ranch hands. But there was a strange energy in the way they moved, quick, careless, and almost urgent. He felt a flicker of worry, though he could not explain why. Meanwhile, the Apache woman continued her task. She rinsed the clothes and hung them carefully on a low branch to dry. Each piece was placed with care, spread out so the wind could reach every part. She worked methodically, taking pride in even the smallest detail. The warmth of the sun on her back was comforting, and the cool water in her hands balanced the heat of the morning. It was a rhythm she had known all her life, a rhythm that brought her peace. The cowboy decided to move closer, not too fast, not too sudden. He wanted to see if the approaching figures were a threat or simply travelers. He walked quietly, boots pressing softly into the sand, careful not to disturb the calm of the lake. As he got closer, he noticed the woman's hair glinting in the sunlight and the way she bent over her work, unaware of anything beyond the water and the clothes she cared for. The figures on the hills became more distinct. There were 4 of them, moving with a roughness that suggested mischief rather than purpose. They carried sacks, and their eyes scanned the area as if they were searching for something or someone. The cowboy's heart beat a little faster. He knew the woman could be in danger if they came closer. He could not leave her unprotected, yet he also had to consider his own safety. The land was wide, but even wide land could hide sudden trouble. The woman finished washing the last of her clothes and began to rinse them one by one. She leaned over the water, her reflection clear in the still lake. The sunlight made her skin glow softly, and the colors of the desert seemed to wrap around her like a gentle blanket. She felt the familiar comfort of the morning, unaware that the calm was about to change. The cowboy stopped behind a low bush, watching the figures on the hills. They were moving faster now, heading toward the lake. He felt a knot of tension in his stomach. He knew he had to be ready to act, but for now, he simply observed, trying to understand what they wanted. He noticed that they were not carrying water or tools. They were carrying intent, a restless energy that made him uneasy. Suddenly, the figures started to descend the hill more quickly. The cowboy realized that the woman might notice them soon. He stepped closer, just enough to be ready to intervene, but still careful not to scare her. His eyes never left the approaching group. He could see one of them laugh, a sharp, careless sound that seemed out of place in the quiet morning. Another kicked a stone, sending it rolling down the slope. The cowboy's hand instinctively went to the strap of his holster, though he hoped not to use it. The woman finally noticed the figures, seeing movement in the distance. She paused, sensing something was not right. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew this land well, and she knew when strangers approached with ill intent. She stood up slowly, brushing water from her hands and adjusting her clothes. Her mind raced, thinking of the small ways to protect herself, though she had little more than courage and quick thinking. The figures were closer now. One of them shouted something, though the words were muffled by distance. The woman's fear grew and she looked around for help. That's when she saw the cowboy emerging from behind the bush, his presence calm but firm. Relief flashed across her face, though fear still lingered. She realized that he might be the only one who could help her against these intruders. The cowboy nodded slightly to her, a silent acknowledgement that he had seen the trouble and was ready to act. He stepped forward carefully, positioning himself between the woman and the approaching figures. The wind carried the sound of their laughter and careless voices, mixing with the gentle rush of the lake's water. The morning that had started so peacefully was now tense, charged with the uncertainty of what might happen next. The woman gripped her basket tightly, feeling the weight of both fear and hope. She understood that she was not entirely alone, that someone had come to stand with her in this moment. The cowboy's presence gave her courage, though her mind still raced with worry. She glanced at the approaching figures, then at the calm water of the lake, drawing strength from the familiar beauty around her. As the group drew closer, the cowboy adjusted his stance, ready to act if necessary. He knew the land, he knew the strength of the woman by the lake, and he knew that sometimes courage was not about fighting, but about being prepared to protect what mattered. The woman watched him, understanding without words that he was there for her. Her fear was still present, but it was now mixed with a glimmer of hope. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, and the lake shimmered under its light. The gentle wind rustled through the trees, and the birds continued their songs, unaware of the tension growing on the shore. It was a moment frozen between calm and chaos, between fear and courage, between the ordinary and the extraordinary. And in that moment, both the woman and the cowboy knew that the day ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. The quiet beauty of the lake, the warmth of the sun, and the gentle sound of water would soon give way to action, courage, and unexpected bravery. But for now, they simply stood, watching, waiting, and preparing for the challenge that was coming closer with every step of the intruders on the hills. The quiet of the morning was shattered in an instant. From the distant hills, the figures moved faster now, their intentions clear. The Apache woman at the lake froze for a moment, her heart pounding. She had sensed danger before, but this time it felt real, immediate, and close. The wind seemed to carry the faint sound of voices, careless and rough, laughing in a way that made her stomach tighten. Her basket, still half full of water, slipped slightly from her grasp and she steadied it, trying to remain calm. The cowboy stepped forward, his boots pressing into the soft earth with careful determination. He positioned himself between the woman and the approaching men, his eyes narrowing as he tried to assess the situation. He had seen trouble like this before, and he knew it rarely ended peacefully if left unchecked. But he also knew that rash action could make things worse. Every step had to be measured, every movement deliberate. The first of the intruders reached the shore. He was tall, with rough clothes and a careless swagger, and he moved with the confidence of someone who believed no one could stop him. Before the woman could react, he grabbed the edge of the clothes she had hung to dry. They flapped in the wind as he yanked them roughly toward him. Shock and fear gripped her. She stepped back, raising her voice in a cry that cut through the stillness of the morning. "They stole my clothes, cowboy! Save me!" she shouted, her words sharp with panic and urgency. Her voice echoed across the lake, rising above the soft lapping of the water and the rustling of the trees. It was a call for help, a plea from someone who suddenly felt exposed and vulnerable. The cowboy reacted instantly. He moved forward, his presence commanding, his voice steady but firm. "Hey, leave her things alone," he shouted, his tone carrying across the small distance between them. The intruder paused, startled by the unexpected authority in the cowboy's voice. He glanced back at his companions, who were still descending the slope with small sacks in hand. There was a moment of hesitation, a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, but it was brief. They were determined, reckless, and used to taking what they wanted. The Apache woman's fear surged, but she tried to steady herself. She had faced challenges before, had learned to rely on her own quick thinking when danger approached. She grabbed a stick lying near the shore and held it loosely, ready to use it if necessary. It was a small weapon, but it gave her a sense of control, a feeling that she could resist if things escalated. She looked at the cowboy, her eyes wide but hopeful, knowing that he was ready to intervene. The cowboy took a slow step forward, his hands visible but relaxed, showing that he intended to protect rather than provoke unnecessary violence. He shouted again, louder this time, "Stop! You have no right to take her things." His voice carried weight and authority, and for a brief moment it seemed as if the intruders might reconsider. But the men were stubborn and careless. One of them grabbed the edge of a blanket and began dragging it toward him, laughing with a harsh, grating sound. Another reached for a small basket of personal belongings, tipping it over so the items spilled onto the sand. The woman's eyes filled with a mixture of fear and frustration. She wanted to run, but the shore was open, leaving her exposed. Her hands shook as she clutched the stick, ready to defend herself if necessary. The cowboy assessed the situation quickly. He could not rush in blindly. The men outnumbered him, and sudden aggression could make the woman's position worse. He needed a plan, a way to protect her while discouraging the thieves. He raised his voice, calling out in a clear, firm tone, "Put it back. You don't want trouble with me." The men hesitated, glancing at each other. The cowboy's calm confidence, combined with the rising authority in his voice, created a moment of tension that hung heavily in the air. The woman, watching from behind the cowboy, felt a flicker of hope. She realized that help had arrived at the perfect moment. Her voice joined his, not with command but with determination, as she shouted again, "Leave it. These are mine." Her words added strength to the cowboy's presence, showing the intruders that she would not surrender quietly. For a moment, the men wavered. One of them dropped a small bundle of clothes back onto the sand, muttering under his breath. Another adjusted the sack he was carrying, considering whether to continue or retreat. The cowboy stepped slightly closer, his posture calm but unwavering. He did not make sudden movements, but his presence alone communicated that he was prepared to defend the woman if necessary. The tension was thick, almost tangible. The lake, which had been peaceful just moments ago, now reflected the chaos of the moment. Ripples spread across the surface as if the water itself sensed the unease. Birds scattered into the sky, their calls sharp and urgent. The woman's heart raced, but she drew strength from the cowboy's steady presence. She realized that courage sometimes came not from fearlessness, but from standing with someone you trusted. Suddenly, one of the intruders lunged forward to grab another piece of clothing. The cowboy reacted immediately, stepping in front of the woman and reaching for the man's arm. He did not strike. Instead, he used his strength and position to block the intruder, forcing him to release the item. The man grunted in surprise, struggling for a moment before giving up. His companions froze, unsure how to react to this unexpected resistance. The woman seized the moment. She held the stick firmly, stepping forward just enough to retrieve a small basket that had fallen onto the sand. Her hands were steady now, guided by determination rather than fear. The cowboy nodded at her, silently acknowledging her bravery. Together, they made a strong impression on the intruders, a combination of courage, authority, and unity that could not be easily ignored. One of the men muttered something under his breath, clearly frustrated by the unexpected resistance. The cowboy kept his gaze steady, not backing down, showing that he was willing to protect the woman at all costs. He took a careful step forward, and the intruders, sensing that their advantage was slipping away, began to hesitate. The woman, feeling a surge of confidence, called out again, her voice firm and unwavering. "Go away! Leave this place now!" Her words were clear, commanding, and reinforced by the cowboy's presence. The men looked at each other, realizing that continuing would likely lead to confrontation they were not prepared for. Slowly, they began to retreat, moving back toward the hills from which they had come. The cowboy watched them closely, ready to act if they tried to return. His eyes followed their every movement, ensuring that they truly left the area. The woman, meanwhile, took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she tried to calm the rapid beating of her heart. Relief washed over her, but it was mixed with lingering tension. She had faced danger directly and survived, but she knew that the world could change in an instant, and vigilance was always necessary. After the intruders disappeared from sight, the cowboy finally relaxed slightly. He turned to the woman, offering a reassuring smile. "You're safe now," he said, his voice calm and steady. "They won't bother you here again." The woman nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. She felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that someone had come to her aid when she needed it most. She began to gather her clothes and belongings, carefully checking each item to ensure nothing was missing. The cowboy assisted without asking, moving with quiet efficiency. Together, they restored order to the small area of the lake that had been disrupted. The simple task of collecting clothes and baskets became a moment of connection, a shared experience that strengthened their unspoken trust. The lake returned to its quiet state, the soft waves lapping gently at the shore. Birds returned to the trees, their songs tentative but growing once more. The wind carried the fresh, clean scent of water, mingling with the warmth of the desert sun. The woman stood by the water, taking a moment to breathe deeply, feeling the calm return to the land and to her spirit. The cowboy watched her carefully, noticing the way she straightened her posture and regained her composure. He respected her courage, understanding that bravery came in many forms. It was not just about standing up to intruders. It was about facing fear, protecting oneself, and remaining resilient. The woman had shown all of these qualities in abundance, and he felt a quiet admiration for her strength. As they worked together to restore the small area, a subtle bond began to form between them. It was built on trust, shared experience, and the mutual understanding that each had faced a moment of uncertainty and emerged stronger. The cowboy realized that heroism was not just about dramatic gestures. It was about being present, supporting others, and taking careful action when it mattered most. The woman realized that help could arrive unexpectedly, and that courage could be amplified when shared with someone who cared. By the time the last piece of clothing was hung to dry and the baskets were secured, the morning had shifted. The sun was higher in the sky, casting warm light across the lake and illuminating the rugged beauty of the surrounding landscape. The intruders were gone, the immediate danger had passed, and the quiet peace of the desert morning was slowly returning. But both the woman and the cowboy knew that the world could change in a heartbeat, and that vigilance, courage, and trust were always necessary. They stood together at the edge of the lake, not speaking at first, simply taking in the restored calm. The woman's eyes met the cowboy's, and in that simple glance, gratitude, respect, and understanding were exchanged. The challenge of the morning had tested them, but it had also brought them together in an unspoken alliance. The lake reflected the sky above, serene and untroubled once more, while the desert wind whispered softly through the trees. And though the memory of fear still lingered, it was tempered by a stronger, brighter emotion: hope. Hope that even in unexpected moments of danger, courage, solidarity, and quick thinking could overcome adversity. Hope that the quiet lake and the wide desert still held moments of safety, beauty, and human kindness. And hope that the bonds formed in such moments, however brief, could leave a lasting impression, shaping the way people faced the world and each other in the days to come. The desert stretched endlessly, its hills rolling under the bright sun. The air was dry, carrying the smell of earth and sparse vegetation. The cowboy and the Apache woman watched the intruders disappear over a distant ridge. Though they had recovered her belongings, the cowboy's instincts told him that the men might strike again or cause trouble elsewhere. He knew that if they were left unchecked, they could harm someone else. The woman stood at the edge of the lake, gripping her basket tightly. Her heart still beat fast from the recent encounter. Fear lingered, but it was now joined by a fierce determination. She had survived this close call, and she felt a strong urge to see that justice was done. "They won't get away with this," she said quietly, almost to herself. The cowboy glanced at her, reading the determination in her eyes. He nodded. "You're right," he said. "If they try to trouble others, they'll need to be stopped. I'll follow them. You stay here where it's safe." The woman hesitated for a moment, but then she understood. This was a dangerous task, one that required knowledge of the land and careful planning. She watched as the cowboy adjusted his hat and tightened the strap on his boots. His posture was calm yet alert, a mixture of patience and readiness that had already shown itself in the encounter at the lake. The cowboy moved swiftly across the sandy terrain, following the faint tracks left by the intruders. The desert was open, but it offered plenty of hiding spots for those who knew how to use the land. Small rocks and low bushes dotted the hills, providing cover for both pursuer and pursued. He moved quietly, careful not to make noise that would alert the men. His eyes scanned the ground constantly, following footprints and broken twigs, small clues that told him where the intruders had gone. The sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows across the hills. The cowboy paused occasionally, using the shade of a rock to rest for a moment and observe the landscape. He could see the tracks leading over a rise, then descending into a shallow valley. The intruders had taken a path that suggested they were trying to stay hidden, moving quickly but leaving signs behind. The cowboy smiled faintly to himself. Their carelessness would be their undoing. Meanwhile, back at the lake, the Apache woman continued her small tasks. She picked up the last of her belongings, making sure nothing was missing. Though she remained at the edge of the water, her thoughts were with the cowboy. She had felt the courage and steadiness in his presence, and she knew he would do whatever it took to ensure the intruders could not harm anyone again. Her heart, though still tense, was filled with admiration and gratitude. The cowboy moved with a rhythm born of experience. He had ridden and walked many miles across similar terrain, and he knew how to preserve his energy while keeping a steady pace. The desert was hot, and the sun was unforgiving, but he did not complain. Each step brought him closer to the men, closer to ensuring that their recklessness would not go unchallenged. He thought of the woman at the lake, her bravery and resilience, and it gave him an extra measure of determination. The intruders had slowed slightly, believing themselves safe for the moment. They rested under the shade of a few scattered trees, laughing and talking as if the morning's encounter had not been a warning. One of them checked the sack of stolen items, satisfied that they had taken what they wanted. Another threw a small stone into the valley, testing the quiet. They were unaware that the cowboy was closing the distance, using the contours of the land to remain unseen. The cowboy observed their positions carefully. He noted the shadows, the rocks, and the gaps between the intruders. He calculated his approach, thinking of how to confront them safely but decisively. He could not let them escape. They were bold and reckless, and boldness without consequence could lead to further trouble. He moved silently, one careful step after another, blending with the desert, his eyes never leaving the men. The woman at the lake, though far away, felt a strange sense of connection with him. She imagined him moving across the hills, tracking the intruders with the same calm focus she had seen in the encounter at the lake. She trusted him, not just because of his skills, but because of the integrity she sensed in his actions. She continued her small tasks quietly, her mind alert, ready in case anything unexpected reached her by the water. The cowboy approached the edge of the valley, finding a position where he could see the intruders clearly without being seen himself. They were busy dividing the stolen items, unaware that they were being observed. He noted their positions, their focus on their spoils, and the small openings in their guard. Patience, he reminded himself, was key. Acting too soon could alert them, and he wanted a moment where he could regain the items without unnecessary risk. The desert heat pressed down, making the air shimmer. The cowboy paused in the shade of a large boulder, wiping sweat from his brow. He listened to the distant sounds, the faint laughter of the intruders, the wind moving through the dry grass, and the occasional call of a bird overhead. Each sound was a reminder of the environment, a world alive and responsive to those who moved within it. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, knowing that the moment to act would come soon. The intruders continued their careless chatter, unaware that the cowboy was carefully circling to a better position. He moved with precision, using the shadows to his advantage. He did not rush. Speed without control would make him visible. His experience taught him that tracking was as much about observation as movement. He noticed the smallest details: a bent branch, a disturbed patch of earth, a footprint slightly deeper than the others. Each clue confirmed the path they had taken and allowed him to anticipate their next steps. The woman at the lake, meanwhile, thought of her family and community. She reflected on the importance of vigilance and courage. Though she had been afraid moments ago, she had acted with clarity and determination. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. She watched the calm lake, drawing strength from its quiet presence, and felt a sense of hope that the cowboy would succeed in tracking the intruders. The cowboy reached the far side of the valley, where he could see all 4 intruders in a small clearing. They were distracted, their attention fully on dividing the items they had taken. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He calculated the safest way to approach, keeping himself out of their line of sight while preparing to act if they tried to escape. He knew that a calm, decisive intervention would prevent conflict and allow him to recover the stolen items. He took a slow, careful step forward, feeling the dry earth under his boots. He adjusted his position slightly, ensuring that he remained hidden behind a large rock. His eyes never left the intruders. They had underestimated the desert, its expanses, and the persistence of someone determined to stop them. He could see that their confidence had made them careless. The cowboy smiled faintly. This was the advantage he had been waiting for. The intruders laughed again, unaware of the cowboy's presence. One of them picked up a small sack of items and tossed it to another, careless in the heat and confidence of the moment. Another kicked at a rock, sending it rolling down the slope. The cowboy noted each movement, preparing to intervene. He did not need to act quickly, only wisely. Patience had brought him to this point. Timing would ensure success. He stepped out from behind the rock slowly, keeping his hands visible but firm. His voice rang across the valley, calm but authoritative. "Leave the items and no one gets hurt." The intruders froze, startled by the sudden presence of the cowboy. Their laughter faded, replaced by confusion and fear. They had not expected resistance so far from the lake, and the sight of a determined figure standing between them and the wider desert gave them pause. The woman at the lake watched from afar, her heart leaping at the sound of his voice. Relief mixed with anticipation as she realized he had caught up to them. She trusted his judgment and strength, knowing that he would act carefully but decisively. She felt a wave of gratitude, recognizing that courage sometimes came from others as well as oneself. The intruders hesitated, unsure what to do. The cowboy stepped forward, keeping a steady gaze and calm voice. He repeated his command, firm and unwavering. Slowly, reluctantly, the men began to move back, tossing the stolen items to the ground as they retreated. They muttered among themselves, frustrated and confused by the sudden turn of events. The cowboy's presence had shifted the balance, showing them that recklessness had consequences. By the time the last intruder disappeared into the hills, the cowboy had recovered all the items. He gathered them carefully, checking each piece to ensure nothing was missing. The sun continued its climb, casting golden light over the desert and reflecting in the distant lake. The air, still hot and dry, now carried a sense of calm restored. The cowboy took a deep breath, feeling satisfaction in the quiet victory and relief that no one had been harmed. The desert sun was high now, casting bright light across the hills and valleys. The cowboy had successfully followed the intruders and recovered most of the stolen items, but he knew the challenge was not over. He needed to make sure they could not return and cause more trouble. The desert was wide and unforgiving, but it also offered clever hiding places. He knew that if he acted with care, he could resolve the situation without violence, ensuring safety for everyone. The intruders had retreated to a small, rocky outcrop, thinking they had lost their pursuer. They spread out slightly, their backs turned toward the wide open land. They spoke quietly among themselves, but their voices carried just enough for the cowboy to catch bits of conversation. They were frustrated, worried, and clearly unsure how to respond to the persistent tracker who had caught up to them. The cowboy crouched behind a large boulder, studying their positions carefully. He did not rush. He knew that acting too hastily could lead to unnecessary risk. His mind worked quickly, weighing each option. The goal was clear: recover any remaining stolen items, ensure the intruders could not escape easily, and protect himself and the woman at the lake. He spotted a few loose rocks and dry brush around the intruders, noting the safest path to approach without alarming them. Meanwhile, the Apache woman watched from the distant lake. She had seen the cowboy disappear into the hills, and she had waited, trusting his judgment. Her hands rested on her hips as she scanned the horizon, worried but confident. She knew that his presence alone could make a difference. The stolen items had been precious, but more than that, the intrusion had threatened her sense of safety. Now, watching him move with purpose, she felt hope mixed with pride in his courage and skill. The intruders finally realized that someone was nearby. One of them picked up a rock and threw it lightly into the valley, testing for any response. The cowboy, hidden behind the boulder, watched carefully. He did not move, letting them reveal themselves while he prepared to act. He knew that confrontation was inevitable, but it could be controlled. Patience, strategy, and careful movement were his greatest tools. He took a slow, deliberate step out from his hiding place, his posture calm but assertive. "I suggest you put everything back," he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the rocky valley. The intruders froze. They were startled by the sudden appearance and the firm tone, realizing that their recklessness had been noticed and that the man before them was neither afraid nor careless. One of the intruders stepped forward defiantly, as if trying to bluff his way through. "What can you do?" "There's 4 of us and you're alone," he sneered. The cowboy did not respond with anger. Instead, he calmly gestured toward the items scattered around the rocks. "It doesn't need to be a fight. Leave them and walk away and no one gets hurt." The intruders looked at each other. Their bravado was fading. They had expected to intimidate anyone who approached, but here was a man standing alone, confident, strategic, and clearly not afraid. One of them muttered under his breath, frustration evident in his tone. "Maybe we should just leave," he said, eyeing the cowboy warily. The cowboy noticed the hesitation and decided it was the right moment to advance slightly. He stepped forward, keeping his hands visible but his posture firm and controlled. Each movement showed that he was prepared to act if necessary but preferred a peaceful resolution. The other intruders shifted uneasily, unsure whether to run, fight, or surrender. At that moment, the Apache woman called out from the lake. Her voice was clear and steady, carrying across the distance. "Leave them. There's nothing here for you to take." Her words were a reminder to the men that their actions had consequences. They glanced toward the lake and then back at the cowboy. Her courage, combined with his presence, reinforced that they were not dealing with an ordinary situation. The intruders began to retreat slowly, tossing the stolen items back toward the rocks. One man muttered angrily, but there was fear in his eyes now. He realized that continuing would lead to trouble they were not prepared for. The cowboy moved carefully, collecting the scattered items as the men backed away, ensuring nothing was lost. His eyes never left them, ready for any sudden move. The smallest bundle was tucked under his arm, the blanket folded neatly, and the baskets retrieved. Each item was checked to confirm nothing was missing. The intruders, seeing their plan foiled, grumbled and whispered among themselves. Finally, one of them gave a short, frustrated shout, and they all turned to leave, moving quickly over the rocks and disappearing into the distant hills. The cowboy watched them until they were safely out of sight. He took a deep breath, feeling relief and satisfaction. He had managed to recover the stolen items without anyone being harmed. The tension that had gripped the morning was slowly leaving him, replaced by calm awareness. He adjusted his hat, wiped the sweat from his brow, and began the careful walk back toward the lake. As he approached the water, the Apache woman ran forward to meet him. Her eyes shone with relief and gratitude. "You did it. You really stopped them," she exclaimed. She reached for the recovered items, checking each piece carefully to ensure everything had returned safely. Her hands trembled slightly, but this time from excitement rather than fear. The cowboy smiled quietly. "All of it is safe," he said, "and they won't be coming back anytime soon." His calm tone reassured her further. He carefully returned each item to her, making sure nothing was damaged or lost in the process. The woman handled them with care, her gratitude clear in every motion. For a moment, they stood together quietly, looking out over the calm lake. The water reflected the sunlight, sparkling like tiny gems. Birds had returned to the trees, their calls light and joyful. The wind moved gently across the desert, carrying the soft scent of earth and water. It was as if the world had returned to peace, washed clean by the courage and determination displayed that morning. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft but full of appreciation. "I don't know how to thank you. I thought we might lose everything." Her words were simple but heartfelt. The cowboy shook his head. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I just did what was right. You were brave too, you stood your ground and called for help. That made all the difference." The woman smiled, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and respect. She realized that courage could be shared, that facing fear together made it stronger, and that trust in others could be a powerful thing. The cowboy's actions had been decisive, but her own bravery had also shaped the outcome. She felt a quiet sense of connection, not just for the help he had given, but for the understanding and respect between them. They began to collect the last few scattered items near the lake, restoring order to the small area. Each movement was careful, deliberate, and calm. The sun had climbed higher, casting warmth over the desert and lake. The peace of the morning had returned fully now, but both the woman and the cowboy knew they had experienced something extraordinary together. As they finished, the woman held the recovered items close. "It's hard to believe this all happened so quickly," she said. "One moment everything was calm and the next chaos." The cowboy nodded. "That's life," he replied. "Sometimes danger appears when you least expect it, but courage and quick thinking can make all the difference." The woman looked out across the lake, taking in the calm water, the soft waves, and the gentle rustling of trees. She thought of how quickly fear could turn to relief, and how important it was to stay aware and brave. The cowboy watched her, understanding that she had learned a quiet lesson in courage and self-reliance, one that would stay with her for years to come. The intruders were gone, the stolen items returned, and the lake returned to its peaceful state. The sun cast long shadows over the hills, the desert air was warm, and the sounds of nature filled the quiet once more. The woman and the cowboy stood side by side for a moment, sharing a quiet understanding and respect born from the events of the morning. Finally, the cowboy adjusted his hat and spoke gently. "I'll be heading on now," he said. "But remember, courage and awareness will always help you face challenges. You've shown both today." The woman nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. "I won't forget it," she replied. "And neither will I forget what you did." They parted with a quiet nod, each carrying the memory of the morning, the restored items, and the lessons learned. The desert and the lake were calm once more, but the bond forged in that moment would linger, a reminder of courage, trust, and the power of doing what is right. The lake was quiet now. The sun had moved higher in the sky, casting warm light across the water and desert. Small ripples danced across the lake's surface, and birds sang softly in the trees nearby. The chaos of the morning was gone, leaving behind only the calm that had existed before. Yet, for the Apache woman, the events of the day lingered in her mind. Her heart still beat faster when she remembered the intruders, the fear, and the sudden surge of relief when the cowboy had arrived. She sat on the soft sand, carefully folding her recovered clothes and checking her baskets. Though she was alone in the moment, she felt a quiet strength. She had faced a situation that could have been dangerous and had survived. She had called for help, and courage had been returned to her in the form of the cowboy's intervention. She understood now that courage was not only about facing danger, it was also about asking for help when it was needed, and trusting that others could respond with fairness and bravery. The cowboy had moved a little distance away, keeping an eye on the horizon. Even though the intruders were gone, he knew the desert could hide many dangers, and he remained cautious. His posture was relaxed now, but alert, ready to respond if anything unexpected appeared. He looked back at the woman who was tending to her belongings and nodded quietly. It was a small gesture, but one that carried acknowledgement and respect. The woman returned his nod, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and a newfound sense of confidence. She realized that trust could be powerful, that relying on someone else in a moment of need did not make her weak. On the contrary, it had allowed her to remain safe while ensuring the situation was handled properly. The cowboy had not only helped her recover what was taken, but he had also shown her a model of patience, wisdom, and courage. She stood up and began to walk along the lake's edge, the soft sand warm under her feet. Each step was measured, careful, yet steady. She reflected on the events of the morning, how quickly fear could appear, how courage could rise in response, and how calm, careful action could change the outcome of a dangerous situation. The memory of her cry for help, the words that had echoed across the lake, still lingered in her mind, but now it was a reminder of strength rather than panic. The cowboy approached her slowly, moving with quiet assurance. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was calm and steady, gentle in a way that immediately put her at ease. She nodded. "Yes," she replied. "I'm more than all right. Today taught me something important. I learned that fear can be faced and that courage can take many forms." He smiled slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile, and nodded. "That's true," he said. "Courage is not just about fighting. Sometimes it's about standing firm, thinking clearly, and taking action when needed. You did all of that and more." That's why the situation ended peacefully. The woman looked down at the recovered clothes and baskets. "I also learned that help can come from unexpected places," she said. "I never expected someone to appear so suddenly and act with such calm and strength." "Your presence made a difference." The cowboy shook his head. "We all rely on each other," he said. "No one can face danger entirely alone. It's a lesson the desert teaches well." They walked slowly along the lake, each step measured, allowing the quiet of the land to settle around them. The water glimmered in the sunlight, reflecting the clear blue sky and the gentle movement of clouds. Birds flitted from branch to branch, and the wind carried the faint scent of earth and water. It was a moment of peace, a reprieve after the tension of the morning, yet filled with reflection and understanding. The woman paused near a small cluster of rocks by the water. She set down her baskets and looked out over the lake. "I feel grateful," she said softly, "not just for my things, but for the lesson, for the courage you showed and the courage I found in myself. I will remember this day for a long time." The cowboy looked out over the lake as well, taking in the calm and the warmth of the sun. "I'm glad," he said. "It's important to carry lessons like this forward. Today could have ended differently, but it didn't. We both learned something valuable about courage, awareness, and trust." The woman smiled, a small but genuine smile that reflected relief, understanding, and pride. "I think the lake will always remind me of today," she said. "I'll remember both the fear and the courage and how quickly things can change. And I'll remember the importance of standing firm, even when it feels overwhelming." The cowboy nodded, adjusting his hat against the sun. "And you'll carry that strength with you," he said. "It's something no one can take away. Courage, resilience, and clarity, they stay with you, even when the moment has passed." They continued to walk slowly along the shore, the soft sand warm beneath their feet. The water shimmered beside them, gentle and reflective. The morning's events had left a mark, but it was a mark of growth and understanding rather than fear. The woman carried her baskets carefully, her posture straight and her steps steady. The cowboy walked beside her, vigilant but relaxed, a quiet presence of strength and reassurance. As they neared the far side of the lake, the woman paused again. She looked at the cowboy, eyes bright with gratitude. "I think we made a good team today," she said. "Even though it was dangerous, we handled it together, and I feel stronger for it." He nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "We did," he said, "and that's what matters." Courage isn't just about one person. It's about the support, the trust, and the calm decisions made together. The woman took a deep breath, letting the scent of the water and the warm desert air fill her lungs. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that the danger had passed and that the lessons of the day would stay with her. The cowboy had helped her recover what was lost, but more importantly, he had helped her see her own strength. She looked out over the water one last time. The surface reflected the sky perfectly, calm and peaceful. The events of the morning seemed almost unreal now, a memory of fear and courage woven together. She realized that she would carry the lessons learned here forever, the importance of awareness, the value of courage, and the strength that comes from trust. The cowboy prepared to leave, adjusting his hat and taking a few steps back. "I'll be moving on," he said. "But remember what we both learned today. Stay aware, stay brave, and trust your instincts. You have strength you may not even realize yet." The woman nodded, a sense of peace settling over her. "I will remember," she said, "and I will be ready should anything ever happen again." "Thank you for everything." The cowboy tipped his hat and smiled faintly. "Take care," he said, and then began to walk away, his boots pressing softly into the desert sand. The woman watched him go, a quiet respect and gratitude in her eyes. Though he had gone, the lessons, the courage, and the bond formed in that morning would stay with her always. She returned to her baskets and clothes, carefully placing each item where it belonged. The lake shimmered in the sunlight, peaceful and still. Birds sang overhead and the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the soft, familiar sounds of nature. The woman felt a renewed sense of confidence, knowing that the world could be unpredictable, but that courage, quick thinking, and trust could guide her through challenges. As the afternoon sun rose higher, the woman took a final look around the lake. She felt grateful for the calm, the water, and the lessons of the morning. She had faced fear, experienced relief, and discovered a deeper strength within herself. And though the cowboy had moved on, his actions had left an enduring impression, a reminder that kindness, courage, and steadfastness could change the course of events for the better. She gathered her belongings, ready to return home, her heart lighter and her spirit stronger. The desert stretched before her, wide and open but no longer threatening. The lake remained calm, reflecting the sky and the warmth of the sun. And in that moment, she knew that she had learned something valuable. That courage was not just about facing danger, but about facing it wisely, with trust, determination, and a calm heart. As she walked back to her small community, the sun warm on her back, she carried with her a sense of accomplishment, relief, and understanding. The morning had been challenging, but it had also been a gift, a test of courage, patience, and human connection. And the lessons would stay with her forever, a quiet strength she could carry into the future, ready for whatever the desert or life might bring.